watching you guys in the press tour, you're like in love with each other.
Insufferable, yes. I know we are glicked, and there's lots
We
in
are
common.
glicked. First time I've ever seen her sing, I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, no, what's going on?
What is going on?
Absolutely.
Hello. How's it going?
It's good, how about you?
I'm great. I'm great.
We share a release date,
We do indeed.
and the fans are calling it glicked.
I'm happy for them to call it whatever they want as long as they go to the theatre.
I have to start by saying how brilliant you are. I watched Gladiator last night, it's unbelievable, and you're spectacular.
Thank you very, very much. No,
welcome.
I saw Wicked about 3 weeks ago, New York. Best place to see it. It goes without saying, I just think you're extraordinarily brilliant in the film.
Thank
but just
you.
beyond that, what can't you do?
Oh gosh, no, coming from you, I've seen you sing on YouTube.
We're starting there.
I'm starting to
Okay,
have to start there because
fantastic.
I'm
This is
sorry.
great.
I am a musical theater nerd and I saw you sing Les Mis. I did.
Those who follow the path of the righteous shall have their reward.
Yeah, with the dodgy like mutton
It was
chop.
great.
Yeah, okay.
It was great. No, I'm very excited because I also know that you're doing Merrily and I'm
Mm-hmm.
a big musical theater fan and that's really cool. I'm very excited.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely share the like musical theatre bug, but I feel like I cannot be the person to start that because we're talking about where did your like love for musical theatre begin?
I don't know. I mean, it was just something that spoke to me. I was a child and I would sit there watching The Wizard of Oz and study Judy Garland, and I just remember it being such an escape. I loved music. I loved the storytelling, the marriage of the music and the stories, and seeing my first Broadway show and just remembering my...
What was that?
It was Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast, great.
But I just remember loving it so much. Yeah, you started in theater. didn't you?
Started Phantom of the Opera was my beginning,
Yeah.
and then I think I really wanted to be in musical theatre to begin with, and then I realised that I couldn't really dance, so that avenue was slowly but surely taken away from me, and I just gravitated more towards like the Phantoms, the Les Mis, the Miss Saigons, and then realised that I probably didn't have the best voice, and then
No.
acting was the avenue that I went down. But I don't know, I just love the act of being on stage, and like to your point about kind of the fusion of acting and music, and what I think Wicked just does extraordinarily well is this kind of, I just had such a cathartic response to watching it because it's like a celebration of not just the musical itself, but people who like musicals will absolutely, I think, adore it. What was your like start point with Wicked?
Well, I was hunting Mark Platt down for an
Great.
audition. As soon as I found out that it might be happening, I just kind of told my team to be on high alert, please. And I know this has to be earned, so when they start seeing people, can I please go in? I'll do anything.
Wow.
And I worked really hard with a vocal coach and an acting coach to get ready because Glinda's vocal track is very different than what I usually sing. So
What's the differences?
well, it's very operatic and very classical, sort of
Right.
coloratura, which is different from doing just like falsetto and whistle tones. It's just a totally different placement in the voice. So I wanted to train to sound authentic in singing opera, and I started, I think, 2 months or 2.5 months before my first audition. And I don't know, it just went from there.
Yeah.
But how did Gladiator come into your life? Obviously, they just called you and begged you to do it. I mean,
wish that was the
the
case.
process?
It was like, it was different in the sense that like Ridley Scott, the great Ridley
Incredible,
Scott,
yes, yeah.
incredible, is at the point in his career where I think he can, whatever he kind of wants, he generally gets. So the process for getting it was essentially I met Doug Wick and Lucy Fisher. Doug was the producer on the first Gladiator, and they both, I met them at the Sunset Tower, and I was like, that was the first instance that I knew that Gladiator 2 was getting made. So I was, at that point, I felt like deeply privileged that I had this kind of private information. And then I met them, and then it went quiet for a little while, and I was like, they've gone elsewhere, they've gone to somebody else. then I was on stage at the time. I was doing Streetcar Named Desire. Thanks.
Which is coming to New York.
It's coming to New York. Yeah.
More questions about that in a few.
That was on the go at the time, and I was in London. And then got a message from my agent being like, Ridley Scott wants to Zoom. And at that point, I was like, this is fucking great.
Yeah.
And then we spoke for half an hour. Like, it was great. We spoke for 10 minutes about the film, 10 minutes about his dog, and then 10 minutes about the sport that I played growing up. And then like in your head, you're like, of course, there's going to be camera tests, auditions, but there just wasn't any of those things. And you get the call, and then then it all starts in your head.
It was brilliant, and I mean,
Thanks.
it was just such a incredible fit and so moving to watch. It was really beautiful.
Thanks.
Was that the real sword from the original movie?
Yeah.
I want to know so badly.
Yeah,
Was it?
all
of it was.
All of it was, yeah. I think there's like different sizings or whatever, but it's the same. I know. That was exactly my response.
That's
when
so
I
cool.
saw it
I
all.
feel like that must be a very commonly asked question, but I had to ask myself.
Oh, like I'm as much of a fan of the kind of lore of Gladiator as anybody else. So it was like a weird position to be in when you're like a fan, but also having to shoulder some big old responsibility about what the next iteration of it is. And like, I think it ties to the point, like, do you when you were...
That pressure is a very specific thing.
But I feel like the pressure is related to actually both films, because you've got the prestige of the musical on stage, and you've got the prestige of Gladiator 1. And like, I want to go back briefly to the audition process. What was that like?
Oh my goodness.
What did you do?
I mean, it was really insane. It was kind of a 3.5 month period of time.
Where did you find the time to do that?
Well, I was filming The Voice simultaneously.
Okay.
So I was going from my vocal coach to my acting coach to doing like The Voice live shows. And I remember I was so nervous about my voice being in good shape because my audition was the next day.
And you'd just done The Voice the night before?
And I was on set doing The Voice, and I asked them to cut the air conditioning because it was so cold on set. They keep it really cold to keep the live audience engaged and, you know, awake and alive. And but it's really cold. Yeah. And so I asked them to turn up just because I had to sing opera the next day. It's very high, and I had to sing No One Mourns the Wicked. And people started to notice, and I was very self-conscious about it. I was like, I'm sorry, it's my fault.
EAC's
and I was
broken.
I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm going in for this audition. Anyway, that was my first audition. And then I had a callback where I had to do some scenes and some more songs.
Was this with Cynthia Erivo, who's...
Not yet. No,
Not yet, okay,
She's the best in the entire world, but we actually never chemistry read together.
Really?
We never chemistry read together, no.
Wow.
My first callback was still alone, and they just gave me more of Glinda's material and more songs from the second movie, some of the more emotional bits for her, just to see how it felt. And we played for a while. I stayed a long time.
And is this you and John?
Me and John Chu.
Right.
And then they did chemistry tests a few weeks later. So it was 3 rounds.
3 rounds.
For me. And I read with 2 different actresses. I stayed for like 3.5 hours.
Right.
The final day. And I had cried so much. My lashes were like this, kind of. So
what scenes did you do for the like acting callbacks?
The final chemistry read, we did everything. We did Popular, we did Defying Gravity, we did For Good, we did the scene, I'm not going to give away too much, but we did one of the scenes
Stuff
leading
from
up to...
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, from the stage show.
Okay.
Because we didn't have a movie script yet.
Okay.
We didn't have one.
Right.
But I took my lashes and I said, and when John was finally like, okay, John Chu, our brilliant director, when he finally was like, we're good, thank you so much. Collect yourself, go to the car, take a deep breath, you did a beautiful job. I was like, thanks everyone, and I left my lashes on the mirror because I left everything else in the room. I was like, why not?
By the sounds of things, you were unbelievably like your heart was invested before that. So how do you, I don't know, how do you cope with the prospect of getting it or not getting it at that point? Do you just kind of leave it in the room? Or how long did it take for you to find out?
Oh gosh, I mean, it was another 3-4 weeks of waiting after that. And it felt like 7 years. Yeah, it felt really long. But I don't know, I just kind of trusted that I had done the work. I had prepared as much as I possibly could have. I had a whole pink section in my closet that I had, you know, purchased little things to have a Galindified section. I did everything. I possibly could, I left it all, and I knew that if it wasn't meant to be mine, that's okay.
Because you've done everything.
And I love Wicked, and I
Yeah.
just wanted it to be beautiful, even if it wasn't mine.
I'm like a target audience for it in that I like love musicals, and I think it's not just I think it's not just for people who love musicals or love Wicked, and I think that's a testament to what you guys created. If it was just an original piece that you guys have made, you've made the perfect version of that, I think, because it's
Thank
it's a
you.
really hard thing to step into something that people adore, but also to be yourself and Cynthia at the absolute center of it. It's like a big responsibility. It's a big responsibility that I think you both shoulder extraordinarily well. But did you feel that when you were shooting it, or do you just kind of go into work headspace and go and
Thank
make
you.
it?
I feel like I could ask you all the same questions.
We got time.
I know we are Glicked, and there's lots
We
in
are
common,
Glicked.
but there's a lot more in common that
Yeah,
I
totally.
think there's. I feel like I have to echo every single question the same way. But Cynthia is just an absolute brilliant gift of a human being, and I think we tried to keep the pressure out of the room, obviously, as
Yeah.
much as possible, so we could just stay present in the material and in each other and hearing each other and listening to each other.
Pink goes good with green.
Goes well with green.
It so does.
I'm watching you guys in the press tour. You're like in love with each other.
Insufferable, yes. Horrible.
You're
It's bad.
absolutely insufferable. No.
Yeah, the
But
most annoying.
But that's half of the relationship in Wicked. The first half is the polar opposite. So how do you navigate? Well, I think I know the answer, but I'm curious to know what you're going to say about like how do you navigate both, like the polar opposite of those relationships that exist in the film?
It's funny because even in the very beginning, when they loathe each other, I'm in awe of Elphaba. She has the thing that I dream of having,
Yeah.
which is magic, you know? And I think there's a secret, quiet part of her that does admire certain things about Galinda too.
Yeah,
These women are both strong in very opposite and yet similar ways.
totally.
And I think they kind of recognize themselves in each other immediately. But I think the thing that makes them think they hate each other is that there are parts that they don't necessarily love about themselves.
Totally.
You know?
They're like sometimes mirror images of each other, and then, as you said, the other times they're the thing that the other person wishes they were.
Right. But what about you? I mean, you must have felt that pressure as well because
Yeah.
how old were you when you first saw Gladiator?
Well, the film came out when I was 4,
Wow.
so my parents didn't let me see it when I was 4.
Right.
And then I watched it with my dad when I was like 13, in and around that age. The only thing I can kind of draw a line between is like doing that and playing Stanley in Streetcar. These are like two performances that have preceded me in like Marlon Brando in Streetcar and Russell in Gladiator. They're extraordinary because the material is so good and because they're talented, but I think you're wrestling between, or I actually wasn't wrestling with the idea of what I wanted to do, but I was wrestling with the idea of how it will be perceived. I think that's my
Right.
big thing as an actor, that I want to have a more complicated answer, but that's the thing that I constantly struggle with, which is I know how I want to go about it, but I also struggle with how my work is perceived, because it's like
Right.
the thing that I want to be proudest of, and there's the thing that I want people to hopefully see as good or moving or whatever it is. But